Hey everybody, welcome to PPR podcast number 82. My name is Rudy. To my right is the star of the episode, Mr. Burt Grossman. Burt, would you like to introduce our special guest?
Nick Canepa, legendary columnist. God, how long you been here, Nick? Since '84?
No, since I've been a columnist since '84, on the paper since '71.
Jeez.
What was your favorite moment ever when I got drafted? Was that, you consider that top of your career?
Well, the best part about you getting drafted is the amount of research I had to do to find out who the hell you were.
Before the internet, too.
Yeah.
Well, hey, you know, let's start there, because draft day has evolved so much that, I mean, now, Burt, if you were the 8th pick taken overall, you would come out of the tunnel, you would be hugging the commissioner, and you'd be set for life financially.
All those things I'm not.
I mean, Nick, it's changed. It seemed so much more innocent back in the day, did it not?
Oh, it was so much fun. I mean, especially when they had the whole draft in one day. I mean, by the time it ended, we would be like wiped out. I mean, the year they had Mr. Irrelevant, I think it ended at like midnight, and we'd been there since like 4 a.m. It was great. It was a lot of fun.
And it's changed so much, I think. I mean, just say, I mean, you know the Chargers the way they are more than anybody, but never called me when I got drafted.
They didn't?
No. I saw it on TV like everybody else did. Then they didn't call me after I got drafted. I got called by maybe you or TJ Simers or Clark Judge or one of those guys before I even got called by the Chargers. And then
Really?
they called me maybe an hour later.
So,
Didn't Sid Brooks used to do that? He used to be back in New York with the phone, I know. Somebody used to do it.
Yeah, I don't know who it was that year, but they almost missed the pick, and they were just the Chargers. I mean, it wasn't anything different than now.
well, you bring it up.
Was Ortmeyer the GM when you got drafted?
He was, yes.
Yeah, no wonder.
Yeah, exactly.
It was a little more loosey-goosey, but it does kind of lead us into one of the topics I wanted to touch on. Nick, now that the Bolts have fled the city, do you still watch them? And did you watch that playoff game in Jacksonville?
He still grades them.
I still grade them. Yeah. I watch the Chargers. I don't understand why anybody wouldn't. So they moved, and there's nothing we could do about it. Wasn't the players' fault. I mean, I don't go to games to watch owners play. I don't. And everybody who puts all this stuff on Spanos is so wrong that, I mean, they just can't see it. They just can't get it. They could not continue to play football in that place. They just couldn't.
Nick, you and I are of the same opinion. I thought, and Burt and I have we've gotten in arguments over this.
Yeah.
I think it was, and maybe it's because I grew up a Vikings fan, and I don't have that. I don't have that special connection that you guys have. But to me, it made perfect sense to flee that stadium and the political environment here in San Diego. You can blame the Spanoses all you want, but it was a smart business move. And boy, when you say that, and I'll catch hell for saying it on this podcast, but I think you agree with me, don't you?
Well, I wrote in the early 2000s that they couldn't continue to play in that place. I mean, people saw that thing from the blimp, and when it was full and it looked great, and that thing was dying inside. It was rotting away. When Bill Wilson was stadium manager, we were chatting during I think halftime on one of the Charger games, and the entire right-hand corner of the stadium was filled with Marine recruits, and they all got up at once to leave, and Bill looked at me and says, "Oh, brother," he says, "if those guys all go to the bathroom at the same time, we're going to have to cancel this game." It was rotting, and I am certain that it was condemned, because nobody's yet to explain to me why the Aztecs, who owned the stadium, they own the stadium, why did they play their games in Carson? Why wouldn't they just play there? They own the stadium. They wouldn't even have to pay any rent on it. They didn't. And I think it was because the place was condemned.
I don't even think the monster trucks would go back to that place. It was so bad.
Well, I mean,
I got a question on
okay.
that. So, I mean, I agree with you to a point. I mean, if you have an owner that doesn't have enough money to build a stadium, which most of them don't, and you get absolutely no help from the city, what else do you do? But, I mean, we seem to have the same thing. I mean, the sports arena should be condemned. It's not, but, I mean, we're a major city, and you go from the stadium and you learned your lesson there. But what about the sports arena? I mean, we have renderings, don't get me wrong, but we don't have an arena.
The city owns it, so take it from there. I mean, they absolutely can do nothing right, nothing. In 2005, I'm pretty sure that was the year, the Chargers wanted 60 acres of land and were building a new stadium on their own. Everything, including cost overruns, infrastructure, everything. And the city ran scared and gave it up. They weren't going to pay a dime. As a matter of fact, and they were never paying a dime for anything because the stadiums that were proposed were going to be paid by tourists, like they are in so many other cities in this country. It's
right.
It's done in Vegas, in Arizona. They have you get tax on the rental cars.
Right.
I mean, if you stay in a hotel in Houston, they have a stadium tax on your bill when you check out. I mean, it's.
We don't like the tax in California, so let's not go there.
Yeah, you know.
We don't tax anything in California.
We don't like the unnecessary tax.
The worst thing about the move, other than the team moving, of course, was the way they handled it. And they handled it incredibly poorly because, Dean Spanos, a.k.a. Fredo, just handled it awfully. He couldn't do it. So they just went after 50 years. And, yeah, I think it left a big hole in this community. I don't care what anybody says.
I'm going to say something really unpopular. I've had several one-on-ones with Dean Spanos, and I enjoyed talking to him. I like the guy. I'm sorry. I know it's just go ahead. Hey, you can't write any hate mail I've never read before. So, but he's just become the bullseye for everybody's hate and angst over the removal of the team. And I found him to be.
You had a conversation with him?
Yeah, we did a couple one-on-ones before he left. And
was it
I believe KUSI is the last San Diego media outlet that he did had appear on their network. As far as I think Brandon Stone scored the last interview with Dean Spanos as an outgoing member of the.
I think me and Nick differ on that opinion. I'm just going to guess.
No. I personally, I always got along with Dean. I never really had. Lord knows there was cause, but I never really got in an argument with Dean. We had dozens of conversations.
Sure.
And, he obviously he used to call me Negative Nick all the time, but he never went. Now Alex, his father, was a different story. We had some knockdown drag outs, but Alex was much more passionate than Dean was. So. I personally never had a problem with them.
I liked Alex too. I mean, Alex, you knew what you were getting. Alex wasn't going to hide anything. I mean, it was what you saw or what you heard is what he was or what you're going to get. I never found that with Dean.
All right. Well, just go on, Dick. Go on.
Dean didn't have Alex's rough edges, and he didn't have his spine. I said it, and I said it before. If Alex were still owned that club, and of course in his later years he had dementia, and I absolutely probably didn't know what was going on. I don't think this club would have moved if he was still in charge of it.
And just to give you how times have changed, and Nick, you probably might have heard this too. I held out from training camp, came to a preseason game. They took me up to meet Alex. He's with Bob Hope. Walk in, he just looks back and says to Bob Hope, "That's the Jew that held me out for all the money." And then they took me out of there. That was my introduction to the owner. That was it. You imagine that today?
Oh no, that would result in a year's suspension.
Oh, but just flat out, right to Bob Hope. They didn't even call me over for a drink, shake hands, nothing. Then he took me back out of there. I'm like, man. Jeez.
Yeah, he was something, that guy.
Yeah, he was.
All right, well,
but I
don't want to spend too much. Just one quick question.
Was that the worst ever?
As far as the highs and the sports highs that you've experienced here in San Diego, Nick, and you've experienced many in a variety of sports, how does this 2022 Padres run compare to that coming back from Pittsburgh after winning that game, or when the city just all seemed to congregate at Qualcomm. Which of those moments, in your mind, was the highest of the highs?
Well, I think the Chargers going to the Super Bowl was, but this was a Chargers town, man. This was it. I mean, they ran this town, and I was unfortunately not here for the Garvey home run. I was in Green Bay with the Chargers. Watched it from Rick Smith's room, and then we went down to the bar. I mean, I wasn't here for it. So, but I heard the atmosphere was unbelievable when it happened. So,
am I mistaken to consider that what just happened in 2022 with the Padres to be the highest of highs? It was 84 and 98. Were those highs even more dramatic?
I thought that I'm really, I that what do you call it became the Padres were kind of accepted back in 84 as the best team then. I thought the 98 team was. I thought that was a great run. Plus, they were playing the Yankees. But the unfortunate thing for the Padres is the two times they went to the World Series, they played maybe the two best baseball teams in the last 60 years.
Yeah, generational teams. The Yankees team, they had like a 300 hitter batting ninth. I mean, if that third baseman, I can't remember his name, but boy, they were just there wasn't an easy out in that lineup.
Yeah, no, there wasn't, and they were smart, and they didn't do bad things, and the Padres should have won that first game back there. I mean, the pitch dead over the middle of the plate that they called the ball, but
you answer that.
It was a great time.
Well, let me ask you this, Nick, because you know better than anybody, and this will tell you who runs the town. Who's more iconic, Junior Seau or Tony Gywnn in this town?
Oh, well, that's Junior was pretty popular. I know, Tony Gywnn was Tony Gywnn, and Tony Gywnn also went to college here, so that was. Heck, I met Tony Gywnn the first day he stepped on campus. I was covering San Diego State. He was there on a basketball scholarship. I think if you go back through history, I think certainly the Padres have had a few superstars in their history. The Chargers have several people in the Hall of Fame, and
right.
Guys like Lance Allworth. I mean, guys like Lance Allworth were icons. I mean,
right.
So
if Junior and Tony are one half of the Mount Rushmore, who are the other two names that San Diego sports Mount Rushmore? Is it Bill Walton?
You're talking about the entire spectrum of sports.
Yeah, like who are the four biggest sports figures in San Diego history? Gywnn and Junior are locks. Is Bill Walton considered a San Diego? He played his high school ball here. He's basketball Hall of Famer.
You got to be on the pros here, so I'm at the level of the pros.
Okay.
I'd say Dan Fouts.
No.
Are you talking about people who actually, not like Marcus Allen played high school football here?
No, professionally here.
He was a better football player than Junior.
You think?
Better in high school, better in college, better in the pros.
Really?
So,
I'm not disagreeing.
Well, tell your Marcus Allen story, because I always repeat it, but about him as a freshman, that he made a kid quit after he tackled him.
Okay, it was his. Actually, I've known Marcus since his sophomore year at Lincoln, and if he played at all, it wasn't much as a sophomore. As a junior, the team opened at Madison, and against Madison in Mesa College, and Terry Monahan, who covers preps around here forever, was working for the Claremont paper then, and we were both there for his debut. And this is absolutely true. I'm not making any of it up. He made so many. He didn't play one down offense as a junior. We stopped counting tackles at 30. He was playing like a rover, and This one kid from Madison came off the field crying and just quit playing football. He was done. We were standing there when he came off the field. He was, and Marcus. I saw the summer league basketball here used to be a big thing. High school teams would play, during the summer and have a regular league. Lincoln made the finals. Beginning of Marcus's senior year, and he dropped 49 in the game.
Jeez.
And he rarely played, and Junior was a great basketball. He was Player of the Year.
Right, CIF. No.
Yeah, and but Marcus hardly played basketball his senior year. He was taking trips everywhere. One thing he told me that think about this happening, say not today, because college players, nothing stops college players from doing anything anymore. Think about maybe 15, 20 years ago. Marcus was recruited by Oklahoma. So he goes back to Oklahoma on the visit. And at halftime of the Oklahoma basketball game, Barry Switzer introduced him as Oklahoma's next wishbone quarterback. I can only imagine Marcus playing wishbone quarterback at Oklahoma. Oh, goodness gracious!
Well,
I don't think that was legal. Do you?
Yeah, I don't think I don't even know if you can do it now.
Yeah, I wonder how much money he got on that trip too. How much cash he got too. I remember, and people forget. He almost made me quit one time. I had held out through camp, didn't go to anything, got called a Jew in front of Bob Hope, and then the next week we were opening with the Raiders, and it was in L.A. then. So I had no camp, not even a rep. It's like 100 degrees. I didn't know what smog was. And then you have Marcus Allen and Bo Jackson in the same backfield. I was literally going to give my signing bonus back at halftime and quit that game. Literally.
Well, you bring. We were talking about Mount Rushmore of San Diego sports. This Friday is going to be the 75th Salute to Champions dinner, the Breitbart deal. What are your?
That Phil Mickelson should probably be on there too.
Phil Mickelson. There's a third guy. I mean, local, professional. Third, he's a lock.
Yeah, you got to talk about if you're just. I mean, Ted Williams didn't play here. Ted Williams is all-time Mount Rushmore. Ted Williams is on it.
Right.
Bill Walton's the best. I could watch basketball forever. Bill Walton absolutely is the greatest high school player who ever lived, period.
And doesn't he count because he played for the Clippers?
Do you ever see Wilt Chamberlain play in Philly?
The great story is
Lou Alcindor? Come on now.
And Steve Bischoff was good friends with John Wooden. He came here from L.A. He covered those great teams in the 60s and early 70s. And he told me the story. Denny Crum was assistant to Wooden. And Helix went up to play in the Covina tournament in Los Angeles, which was at the time was the biggest tournament in the state, high school tournament in the state. He played 5 games in it. So, and in the final, they played Pasadena, which won the SCIF up there that year. And I don't know the final score, but they beat them by like 40. And Gordon Nash, the coach, hardly played Walton. Walton averaged 30 points a game, and lucky if he played a half. And in that game, he scored 50 points and had 35 rebounds. And Denny Crum went back to UCLA, walked into Wooden's office, and John's sitting there at his desk. He's sitting there at his desk, and Crum tells him, "Coach, I've just seen the greatest high school player ever." And Wooden looked up over his glasses and said, "Who is that? Better than Lewis?" And Denny Crum said, "Yes." And Wooden said, "Keep your voice down and close the door." And that was it. He was so good that it was when he was in college, he was in high school. He was so brilliant that
I think
if there was dispensaries back then, would he still been good? If they had dispensaries back then, like today, would he still been that good?
Pot dispensaries.
Well, believe me, he found a way back then.
All right.
He didn't need dispensaries.
I think then the consensus is it's Junior, Tony, Phil, and Walton.
But if you're putting Walton on there, you got to put Ted Williams on there.
Walton didn't he play a season for the Clippers?
The Clippers? All right.
That counts as a
All right.
I don't know if he ever got a season out of him.
But he did play professionally in San Diego.
Well, he was on the team.
Okay, well that to me counts.
I mean, he was on the team. Well, so Ted Williams was on the Padres. So.
But in the minors.
You're right. Exactly. It's really hard. Like I say, Marcus was a better high school player than Junior. And that's not demeaning Junior in any sense of the word. I saw Junior in the All-Star game between San Diego and Los Angeles teams. He was the best player on the field by a light year. He was a great player. Matter of fact, Burt, is Junior the greatest undisciplined football player who ever lived?
He's the most undisciplined player I ever played with, and the greatest undisciplined. But
are you referring to him on the field as far as?
On the field. But he was so gifted athletically, he would make up. The other people, you can't take 2 or 3 false steps and still make a play against Bo Jackson, but you could see him do that to say how great an athlete he was.
Right. He was amazing. I mean, Junior really, when you think about it, never really learned how to play correctly because he didn't have to.
Yeah. Which is interesting because when he first came in, he was such a great pass rusher at USC athletically.
Right.
But he couldn't do it in the NFL because he had no technical ability. But he didn't even have to watch game film or do anything. It was just he would run, and he was so big and strong and fast and quick and reactive that it didn't matter at the highest level.
I think Junior means, and I'm a big fan of Marcus Allen. And while I didn't get to see him play in the preps, I saw him play in Kansas City at the end of his career, and he was still the baddest hombre on the field. I think Junior means more to the city of San Diego than because Marcus moved away.
No, I agree with that.
So to me, they're both Hall of Famers, obviously. But I think you give the nod, and assuming you can't give it to more than one football player, I think Junior is your football representative. I think Tony, with all respect to Ted Williams, is your baseball representative. Phil Mickelson's an easy pick because he's got 6 majors, and even though he may be tainting it a little bit with his flirtations with the Saudi Arabians, I still think you have to count what he's done in the sport of golf is exceptional.
Billy Casper is close.
Well, Billy Casper won 2 majors?
Yeah. Well, I'm not saying Billy Casper was a great player. I mean, not just good. He was a great player.
Who was the Walrus? Who was that?
Craig Stadler.
He was here, wasn't he?
Yeah, but he's not in their league. I would rank it Phil, Casper, Stadler.
And Gene Littler.
Yeah, now you saw more of Gene Littler. I think I owned a set of Gene Littler clubs back when I was a little kid. That's as much as I knew him.
Well, Stadler won 1 major, I think. I think he just won Masters, I think.
Billy won the Masters. Did he win a U.S. Open?
Let
me check.
Yeah, don't have to. All right, I got one question for you, Nick, while he checks. Okay. Chargers meltdown on Saturday.
Classic.
Where does that rank as their biggest Charger move since you've been covering them? And if it's not first, what is more than that?
It's not first. It'll never be first. They'll never have another first. The 1979 loss to the Houston Oilers here a playoff loss will always be number 1. For more than one reason. Number 1, they were the best team in the NFL. They beat Pittsburgh here like 35-7. They beat the Rams like 42-16. Those 2 teams were in the Super Bowl. Pittsburgh won the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. They were the best team. And Houston came in without Earl Campbell, Dan Pastorini, and their best receiver, Kenny Burrow. Fouts threw 5 picks here in town, and they got beat. I think it was 17-13. They'll never top that one. The next year they lost to Oakland. That was another. They were better than Oakland, They lost to Oakland in the AFC Championship here.
Oh, well, continue, but are we glossing over how about when they had New England on the ropes here and they
were the best team they were the best team in football that year too.
Isn't that the greatest meltdown?
Kind of going chronological.
Okay, sorry.
We only have 18 hours right now.
Yeah, I mean, all right. So
you got to take all the circumstances into play. I mean, the loss to New England was horrible, but the '79 team was the best team in football. They absolutely were, and the team that came in to play them. I mean, when the Chargers lost to New England, Tom Brady played. I mean, their starting quarterback didn't play. Their Hall of Fame running back, who's, in my opinion, one of the 5 best running backs in history, didn't play. Their best receiver didn't play. And this one was awful, but I tell you what, I was not surprised one bit that they lost that game.
Well, it wasn't like Dan Pastorini was Warren Moon or anything.
No, but he was
good.
Better than the backup.
I just got a call from the brain room. Billy Casper won 2 U.S. Opens, won 51 PGA tournament events, and 10 others around the world. So his numbers compare. While he doesn't have as many majors as Phil, he certainly has won as much as Phil.
No, and maybe the greatest putter who ever lived. He was, and a really nice man, really good man.
Well, I bring it up because you're part of the Breitbart Brain Trust. Friday night, I get to MC the event at for the 75th annual one. Never done it before. That's usually Laz's job, but Laz has gone into retirement. And
did you invite me or what?
Well, I could you speak to that event? What it means to San Diego? Could you speak to the arguments? Because I've seen you guys go at it. Where I'm just like a little quiet kid in the corner. I'm afraid to get in because you newspaper heavyweights start throwing around your memory, and it gets pretty heated in there as you try to figure out who should be considered a San Diego Hall of Famer. Does it not?
Oh yeah. I mean, I don't even know who's going in this year. Who's going in?
I know Gates is.
Who?
Antonio Gates.
Yes.
And I know. There's a volleyball player, and
you're emceeing the event. And this
I got a script for Pete's sake. I don't know it off the top of my head. Don't put me on the spot.
Let's give it up for a volleyball player.
Here, Antonio Gates is the headliner.
Yeah. Well, he's a great player.
Yeah. And could you speak to how about speak to Bob Breitbart, what he meant to this town?
Oh, Bob was a personality, and he basically devoted his life to that thing. I mean, the amazing thing was it never, I'd go in there every once in a while in the Hall of Champions at Balboa Park, and a lot of times I seemed like I was the only one in there. You know what I mean?
Right.
It was really well thought out. It was well run. It was a great sports museum, and when you made that list, you were good. But we did have some battles.
Oh, I witnessed them. I was Steve Brand at the chalkboard. Man, you guys would start. I still think Chuck Cecil should be on it.
I don't know. I'm thinking, did Terry Mann ever make it?
I don't know.
I know Tommy Nettles didn't, and he's one of the handful of greatest athletes we've ever had. There's something there politically that keeps him from getting in.
Wait, Chuck Cecil's not in?
No, Chuck.
Terry Mann was the first great woman basketball player I've ever seen.
I think she might. I'll have to check that out. I don't know.
She was the first time I saw her play, and for Point Loma High, she went up, ripped down a one-handed rebound, and led the fast break. And I'd never, ever seen, and she was a freshman. I had never seen that before. She was really, she was the Bill Walton of women basketball here. She was magnificent.
Well,
You're way over.
You're already the longest podcast we've ever done. So, and you know what? I have about a dozen more questions, Nick. I really appreciate you making time for us. Your name carries a great deal of weight, and I just want to say this because I want to say it publicly. I know you've been fortunate enough to get a mention in your Thanksgiving Day column is still the biggest damn treat. That even at age 62, it means more to me than any plaque or Emmy award or any other thing that's up in any other trinket in my office, because it means it's a nod, a tip of the cap from you, Nick, and I just want you to know it means a great, great deal. And thank you for everything you've done for your kindnesses to the PPR and your kindnesses to San Diego sports. You are a legend, sir, and it is great to rub shoulders with you.
Thank you. I love the preps, and that show I consider to be a miracle. The difference now between when I covered preps in the mid-'70s is astonishing. Kids couldn't even talk then. You guys are interviewing kids after these games that sound like they're out of college. I mean, the advancement in coaching and just the kids themselves around here. We were lucky if we got 5 kids. We were lucky if we got 5 kids go Division I back in the mid-'70s.
Really? That's a thing. Now we have 20 kids going D, and 20 and maybe 20 more going D2.
Lincoln has 20.
I'm just saying, we closed up the town in Madison if we ever had a kid that made it to
Madison, Wisconsin, not Madison High.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about in Madison, Wisconsin. If we had a kid that made it to D1, we had a parade. I think we had one kid my entire high school career that made it to like North Dakota State or something like that.
It wasn't you?
It wasn't me. So
how many offers you have?
But I didn't have any offers. But if I had offers, I would have played. Nick, on both sides of the microphone, if I could just brag a little bit on the people that are working on the show, the level of talent of people that can make the deadline, because you know what deadline pressure is all about. I get to work with a ton of cool kids, and the fact that they all share the same passion and vision, I think it's been a service to the city of San Diego.
Well, it's a credit to you. They should have a day in your honor, and maybe one in Burt's in the future.
No, I'm not getting one.
I think Burtford. All right, Nick, we've kept you way past. I promised I'd keep it under 25, and it's now at 32. I'll post this later. We put some clips up on Thursday on Good Morning San Diego, and then Brandon will run a few. Thank you, sir. I promise I will not hit you up for another favor for at least 6 weeks.
You can do it whenever you want.
Nick Canepa, everybody. Turn off
Nick.
the TVs. We're done.